suspect. UEFA Europa League is what we do have in stock today. So allow me to do the usuals. Test out my microphones and everything so that we can get set for today's broadcast, which I hope will be quite very entertaining for all of us. Kindly bear with me as we test out our audio to be sure that everything does align properly before we get ourselves started. But I think we're good. I think we're good. We haven't gotten our audios misfired so much in recent times, but it doesn't hurt to be sure. It doesn't hurt to be sure. It doesn't really hurt to be sure. Just a second as I wait for you guys to join the broadcasts. So yeah, let's get it all set. As I wait for all of you to join the broadcast. But anyways, there's plenty of action to come. There's the UEFA Conference League semi-finals. There is a Premier League game tonight. But like I said, our focus is going to be in the UEFA Europa League and mainly on Manchester United. So I'm waiting for all of you guys to join so that we can get it all started. Yesterday we had a wonderful night. That's in the UEFA Champions League semi-finals, and Barcelona Inter Milan gave us a very thrilling game in a 3-all draw. So, anyways, good morning once again, and welcome back to the Football Tribe YouTube channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Today I'm wearing an Ajax jersey to remind Manchester United fans that they beat up against Ajax in 2017 to go ahead and win the UEFA Europa League under the charges of Jose Mourinho. Paul Pogba and Henry Mkhitaryan were the goal scorers for Manchester United in that game, as they won it by 2-0. Zlatan Ibrahimovic was still at the club. So that's why I'm putting on an Ajax jersey to remind Manchester United fans that they ought to do history again and go ahead and win that competition. Will they be able to do it? Well, tonight they face off with the side that will be hosting the finals of this year's UEFA Europa League final. So I believe that side in Athletic Bilbao have perhaps a greater motivation to sort of advance to the finals, but then United have their entire season to salvage in any case, if it's anything to go by. But before we get started with all that, do let me know where you guys are tuning in from. It will be wonderful to hear from you if you guys are doing well. I wouldn't want this to be one-way traffic, so let's kindly engage. In the meantime, let me give you some of the fixtures, the key fixtures that are there tonight in regards to all football. But like I said, main focus will be in the UEFA Europa League. So in the Premier League at 7:30 p.m., we will have a kickoff game there between Nottingham Forest and Brentford. Remember, over the weekend, Nottingham Forest were not in action in the Premier League because they had a date in the semi-finals of the FA Cup, in which they lost by 2-0 to Manchester City, who booked themselves a date on 17th May in the finals with Crystal Palace. So that's why they're having a game played this Thursday night, and that will be at their home against Brentford. Then in the UEFA Europa League, Athletic Bilbao, that's at 10 p.m. East African time, will host Manchester United at San Mames, while Tottenham Hotspurs at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium will be at home against Bodo Glimt. I think Manchester United know a thing or two about this Bodo Glimt side. And then in the UEFA Conference League semi-finals, that's Jagaden will be up against Chelsea at the same kickoff time, and Real Betis will be at home against Fiorentina. Real Betis are under the charges of a former Manchester City manager in Manuel Pellegrini, who also managed. There's another side that he did manage in the Spanish La Liga, where San Cazorla used to play his football. That club does elude me, but yes, I can see Paul is tuned in right from Kampala. Thank you so much, Paul. He was a friend of mine, a very Manchester United fan, I must say. Where's Gregory? Another Manchester United fan. I'm waiting for him to as well join the broadcast. But anyways, where do we even start? Because there's plenty to talk about in regards to this particular fixture of Manchester United versus Athletic Bilbao. We're talking about an Athletic Bilbao who, by the way, last season won themselves a piece of silverware, just pretty much like Manchester United did when they won the FA Cup. On the other side, Athletic Bilbao, under the charges of Ernesto Valverde, were winning the Copa del Rey after beating, I think, Real Mallorca 4-2 on penalties that proceeded a 1-1 draw in normal time. So we are talking about teams that do know a thing or two about playing in the finals. While Manchester United were winners of the 2017 Europa League, Athletic Bilbao have never won this competition but made it to the finals in 2012, but ended up losing to Atletico Madrid by 3-0. I think Radamel Falcao Garcia Zarate scored a brace in that particular fixture. So they are not new at this stage of the competition. That's the first food for thought. But in terms of history between the two sides, they've only met twice, and that was back in 2011-2012 season. United crashed out of the UEFA Champions League at the expense of Benfica and FC Basel from Switzerland, who advanced the round of 16, and then Manchester United dropped to the round of 16 in the Europa League, and they had to play Athletic Bilbao. Now they lost the tie over 2 legs on a 5-3 aggregate score because they lost by 2-1 at San Mames and then lost by 3-2 at Old Trafford. For those of you that do remember, Wayne Rooney scored all Manchester United's goals over the course of 2 legs, while Fernando Llorente scored, I think, 2, and then Oscar Di Marcos also scored 2 of the Bilbao goals, and then I think it was Ika Monain who scored the other goal that won the fixture for Athletic Bilbao, who are under the charges of Marcelo Bielsa. For those of you that do not follow the Spanish La Liga so much, Marcelo Bielsa just a couple of seasons ago was with Leeds United. So that's the only history that is there to discuss about these two sides. So historically, in terms of meetings, Bilbao seem to be the better side, but we all know that Manchester United are a much bigger club as compared to Athletic Bilbao. Will that give them the advantage? Well, they face a side that have not lost a game at home in 6 games in the UEFA Europa League so far up until this stage. But also Manchester United are also unbeaten in Europe. For everything they've gotten wrong back in league football, as far as the Premier League is concerned, yes, I can see Enoch is with us today for the first time joining a live broadcast. Thank you so much, Enoch. What are your predictions for today's Man U game? I'll be giving those possibly towards the tail end of this broadcast. But for now, let's focus on the news that lies in between. So, like I was saying, Manchester United, for everything they've gotten wrong domestically, they've sort of compensated for that in the UEFA Europa League. And I think if there is any glimmer of hope or even happiness within the Manchester United fan base, it's what they've been able to do on the European scene. We all remember the dramatic quarterfinal that we did watch at Old Trafford when they knocked out Lyon 5-4. That's winning that game at Old Trafford, but it was 7-6 on aggregate. So very, very interesting fixture. On the other side, Athletic Bilbao, who by the way do not concede so many goals, were knocking out Rangers by 2-0 that proceeded a goalless draw when they were playing in Scotland. So two formidable sides coming up against each other. Unfortunately for Athletic Bilbao, they won't be without their season's star player in Ohai Sunset, because this guy has been quite tremendous for Bilbao this season, being involved in 20 goals, that's scoring 17 and providing 3 assists in 32 appearances. Now, he's missed the last couple of games through injury. They tried to rush him back, but he's appeared unfit for that course, and he will be sidelined for this particular fixture. On the other side, Manchester United are welcoming back one of their, sort of transformative player in Amadou Diallo, back from injury, as well as Matthias De Ligt is also back. I find him a very good defender, by the way, Matthias De Ligt, while Diego Dalot will be absent for this particular one. So then again, we'll get to look at how we think Manchester United will be setting up for this particular fixture because of how crucial it is. But like I was saying, besides Sunset, who has been tremendous, you do have a Nico Williams, who is a hot cake as far as the European market is concerned, ever since last summer at the Euros, where he really showed us what he's really made of. It did attract a lot of interest from the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool, and Chelsea that have been mentioned in the ranks of wanting to sign him, as well as Barcelona. This season, he has a 7-goal contribution in the Europa League. That's in 6 games that across the competition. Sorry. Scoring 5 goals and providing 2 assists. So he will be one of the players that Manchester United will be looking to cut out if they are to have a chance at San Mames. And then, of course, his brother Inaki Williams, who features for Ghana, did score on the weekend as they beat up against Las Palmas by a goal to nil. So those are some of the players that Manchester United will want to look to target. Also, Bilbao have a very decent keeper in Unai Simon. He does start in with Spain ahead of the likes of David Raya. So he's a very decent goalkeeper. Speaking of goalkeepers, I've had speculation that Manchester United could be looking for a new goalkeeper. Maybe Andre Onana is underperforming. Unai Simon could be one of those that you get to look at. But we'll wait to see how the summer does fare on that one. On the side of Manchester United, where is their threat in terms of trying to threaten this Athletic Bilbao, who are by the very defensively solid. They played as many as 20 games at home, and I think only in one occasion have they conceded more than 2 goals at home. So that's how defensively solid they've been. And recently, their only lost game against Real Madrid, who needed a late winner to win that game by a goal to nil. So, but that was away from home. But at home, under Ernesto Valverde, Atletico Bilbao just do not concede so many goals. They're very defensively disciplined. While they won't score plenty of goals, they are also defensively disciplined as far as that goes. But like I say, Manchester United is attacking strength offensively. Well, I think does come mainly from one player, and that is for me Bruno Fernandes, who for the last 3-4 months has been a very, very much standout player. If the game against Lyon is anything to go by, then we'll have to mention the likes of Casemiro, who played like a prime Andrea Pirlo on the day. But that notwithstanding, I think it's going to be very interesting to see then how Bruno Fernandes is able to galvanize his side as captain with the likes of Alejandro Garnacho, who personally I do expect will start this particular fixture. It has started raining out here, so in case my voice drops a bit, kindly let me know so that we can see if we can do much better. But anyways, so Manchester United is a strength will come in that, and as well as the midfield, which I do think, given that it's an away game, a manager Ruben Amorim could be looking to protect with a double pivot of maybe Casemiro and Manuel Ugarte. So again, we'll see what kind of thing he does through, but we all know that he plays with the back three and the wing backs, which could be Patrick Dogu and Mazraoui on the other side, and then adding that midfield, add on either Manuel Ugarte and Casemiro, and then you have Bruno Fernandes, and then maybe Alejandro Garnacho as well as Rasmus Højlund in that kind of setup. At least that would be the expectation. Of course, Andre Onana gets to start in goal with maybe back to Harry Maguire, Lenny Yoro, and who will be the third partner. Is remains to be a key question. Will it be Luxo? Again, we do not know, but Luxo caused a bit of trouble for Manchester United in the last fixture against Lyon when he caused that penalty that Lyon wanted to score. So again, I will wait to see how Ruben Amorim assembles his team against Ernesto Valverde. Like I said in the preamble of this video, that the motivation mainly for Atletico Bilbao for this particular fixture is that they will be the ones hosting the final, and I'm sure they want to feature in the final where they get to play at home. Will that happen? Well, they do have a big chance given their defensive solidity. Manchester United, because as much as they score so many goals, I think they've scored as many as 28 in the competition, but they also conceded almost just as much because they've conceded as many as 17. So I see the key battles. Of course, like I usually say, once you take control of the midfield, then you increase your chances of winning a match. And whether Manchester United can dominate that midfield remains to be seen. But personally, I do not think so, because we all know that United have not been really very good when in possession. Leave them with the ball, they will at times look lost of ideas of what to do with the ball. So again, I think the strategy will be kind of a bit reserved, kind of sit back, not entirely, but a bit laid back, and then look to capitalize on a counter attack when they get those spaces, especially within the wings to run through for Alejandro Garnacho, for Patrick Togu, and all the others to run through and try to threaten this Bilbao side, who are very, very defensively solid, like we've mentioned. So a lot of things to consider. It's a game that has really puzzled my mind when it came to predictions because I'm torn between a draw, that's a 1-1 draw between the two sides, and a marginal 2-1 victory for Athletic Bilbao. That's where I'm really torn. And because United are unbeaten, while you may, whatever you may think of them, whether they've conceded or not, somehow in the Europa League, they've motivated themselves enough to always get a result away from home and look to finish things back at Old Trafford. And I think this is the biggest advantage they've had this season. When you look at this particular game, it's away from home. They get to study the opponents, come back at Old Trafford, and then complete, the magic. Up until this stage, Athletic Bilbao knocked out AC Roma. They did lose in Italy by 2-1, and then won the reverse fixture by 3-1. I think Nico Williams scored the best in that one. And then, of course, at the quarterfinals, knocked out Rangers, while Manchester United knocked out already the Spanish side in Real Sociedad, and then proceeded to knock out Olympic Lyon. That's at the quarterfinals. I'm shifting my love for senior romancy to Europa. Thanks for the compliment, everybody. Much appreciated. Kindly like the broadcast and support the community. Anyways, so like I said, I'm torn between a draw, a 1-1 draw, and a 2-1 victory. But I get the feeling that Manchester United could lose their first game in the Europa League this season when they go to San Mames. Because we're talking about, by the way, Ibai Gomez is still playing. He's still playing. When Manchester United was losing to Athletic Bilbao back in the days, that is in 2012, it's the same side that had Ander Herrera, who dominated that midfield so much the fascination of Manchester United that they later signed him. That team that had Javier Martinez, who went on to play for Bayern Munich. They also had Ika Munayin. Fernando Llorente went on to play for Juventus at some point. So that was the core of their team. Ibai Gomez. There was also another player called Susueta, very, very dangerous player in there. You said great analysis, bro. I agree with you on almost everything you have said. Just a quick reminder to the betting fraternity. Just one of Manchester United's last 63 European games ended goalless. So yeah, I do not expect a goalless draw. I do expect goals to come, but I do expect given Bilbao's defensive solidity, I expect that bit of struggle for Manchester United to create chances. And if anything, you do know that United have struggled to create chances. Now, over the weekend, they played an FC Bournemouth side who they still struggled against. Now, Bournemouth kind of plays some slightly similar football to what Athletic Bilbao does play. But United goes on and eventually got that equalizer. So I think Ruben Amorim will look to have taken some bit of lessons from the from the Bournemouth game, because remember, Bournemouth are also under the charges of Andoni Iraola, another Spanish manager. So they are up against a Spanish manager in Ernesto Valverde. So if there's any lesson to pick up from there, because of the similar like of play, because Bilbao dominated the game within the flanks. Inaki Williams, and then even Inaki Williams, while he plays as a centre forward, sometimes he drifts wide as well, and so Nico Williams as well, very threatening. A football legend edit. Name a footballer for an edit. I am edit. Okay. Foot legend edit. Thank you for doing the broadcast. So, and thank you so much, Paul, for that fact. So I'm thinking a 1-1 draw for Manchester United or a 2-1 victory. But I'll go with the 2-1 victory for Atletico Bilbao, and then Manchester United will return to Old Trafford to try and get the job done and advance to the finals and sort of get themselves to return to Spain to the finals. That's at San Mames. So, guys, beyond my prediction, give me your predictions as well. Let me know where you think the key battles will be. I think that Manchester United back three may be in for quite a lengthy night in terms of having to defend against that Bilbao side. They do know how to, run into spaces. Like we all know, most La Liga teams, they do know how to use the ball, they know how to distribute it. While Bilbao can be a bit reserved, you do expect that they will look to open up a little bit so that they can get that advantage, because they know what it means going into the second leg with that advantage. Probably you've seen what happened with Lyon at Old Trafford. Will Manchester United win tonight's game? I want to multiply this rate. Like I said, my prediction is for Bilbao to win by 2-1. That's where I'm inclined. Isaac, do not stake your rent on Manchester United. That team is very unreliable. I think it's been a hard team really to predict, because, for example, just over a week ago, Manchester United went from beating Lyon 5-4 dramatically, Harry Maguire being the scorer of the winner, to losing to Wolverhampton Wanderers by a goal to nil. Pablo Sarabia scoring that free kick, and then they went on to draw a game against AFC Bournemouth. Not that they could have won it, but should Bournemouth have not even gotten that red card to Evan Nilsson, maybe they could have walked away with all 3 points. Never mind that red card has also been, rescinded or uplifted because of the incident that I kind of explained in the manner in which it was given. So it is that Man United have been hard to predict, but also unreliable. They've not won 2 consecutive games, I think, this season, as far as the Premier League is concerned. So while you think they've had it good in this particular game, they could really disappoint you in the next game. And when you look at the players overall, you may think, besides Bruno Fernandes, we need to get a grip of the entire team. And then yet the following game, they'll give you flashes of brilliance and remind you of the good old Manchester United, like we saw in that game against Lyon. So in terms of staking your rent on it, I'll say bet what won't hurt you. So yeah, Portugal is saying my prediction is a 2.5 over and both teams to score. I'll be inclined to agree with you that while Bilbao are defensively disciplined, I think United could find a way, because they're capable of scoring unconventional goals. Usually, you do not sit in a game and see that a goal is coming for Manchester United, but then eventually the ball hits the back of the net, and you're thinking to yourself, am I watching prime Manchester United or a different United? So in that kind of sense, if you know what I mean. And then Gregory said, bro, Enoch, put all your ancestral assets on Manchester United win. You will thank me later. If that were the case, he would have been thanking you for the last 1 month. But that's just a footnote of the conversation. I see Volt saying hi. Hi, Volt. Thank you for joining the podcast. Kindly give me a like there if you do not mind. So really, it's going to be interesting to see how this game develops. But guys, allow me leave it at that for Manchester United and slightly talk about Tottenham Hotspur, because they're up against an on-form Bodo side who have sort of readjusted their fortunes. But before I divulge into that, the fact about this Europa League semi-final is that 3 of the teams that are in the semi-finals this season of the Europa League finished within the top 4 of the league format table. And the only team that is out that led the table was Lazio. And remember, Lazio were knocked out at the quarterfinal stage by Bodo. I think after Bodo beat them by 2-0, and then Lazio won the reverse fixture by 3-1, which meant a 3-3 aggregate score. So they went in for penalties, and Lazio were knocked out. But Athletic Bilbao finished second, United finished third, and Tottenham Hotspur finished 4th on that league table, while Bodo, I think, finished 9th on the league format table. So clearly you can see that they are not lookers at this stage of the competition. It is the second versus third as far as that league format table is concerned, as far as this stage is concerned. And then Volt, you come back to say you think Madrid do better next season. I think Madrid will do better next season, yes, but that is when they do buy players. As we speak, they've lost many of their players to injury. they've lost Farland Mendy, they've lost David Alaba, they've lost Antonio Rudiger. All those, their season is almost as good as done. Gregory, you say, Robert, remember, we are unbeaten in Europe. That's true. That's true. But anything can happen, and the stakes couldn't be even higher at this kind of stage. Up until yesterday, Inter Milan had not conceded more than 2 goals in a single match of the UEFA Champions League, and yet yesterday they shipped in as many as 3. Then up until Tuesday, Arsenal had not lost at home in the UEFA Champions League this season, and yet they went on to lose to PSG by 1-0. So while that is true, a fact that United have not lost this season, I mean, it could go either way. That same record could be broken in a single night. I think for Inter Milan, the first time they had conceded 2 goals in a UEFA Champions League was in the return leg versus Bayern Munich in Italy. That game finished in a 2-2 draw. So while that is true that United are unbeaten, I mean, Athletic Bilbao are also unbeaten at home in 6 games this season. So, and that's on that basis that I've gone, even when instinctively I was more inclined to a 1-1 draw between the 2 sides. I get the feeling that given what it means at home to be able to play in the final at San Mames, it could be the sort of factor that shifts the tie a bit in favor of Athletic Bilbao. And of course, the home advantage of being in front of your home crowd, being, backing you up and with all the support and that kind of thing. Gregory, you go on to saying that means our league performance is far different from Europe, and this is only chance we have to come back to Europe. Yes, that is true. Like I've said, if you want to find any sharp contrast, is simply look at United's form in Europe versus that they've had in the league. For everything they've done wrong in the Premier League, they've compensated by doing the right things in Europe, and that's a factor. So while the results in the Premier League, we could look at them, they would not give us the best benchmark to compare to what Manchester United could be able to do in Europe. So I do agree with you on that part. But like I said, these records get broken, and look at Barcelona yesterday. While we knew they concede goals, we did not expect that Inter Milan were going to come at them in the manner in which they did. So, I mean, it's subjective, depending on which way you look at it. So, like I said, allow me kindly move to that game between Tottenham Hotspurs and Bodo Glimt. Bodo have come on form in recent times. Of course, getting to the semi-finals, Tottenham Hotspurs had to knock out Eintracht Frankfurt, who are the 2022, I think, European UEFA Europa League champions. That team that I think had the likes of Luka Jovic. So that team, quite very impressive. They knocked them out by 2-1 on aggregate. The first leg, I think, ended in a 1-1 draw, and then Spurs won the reverse fixture by 1-0. So it's a home game. It's, of course, we all know Ange Postecoglou has come under heavy criticism for his style of football, for the way he assembles his team, with how defensively leaky they've been. They just come out of the weekend where they shipped in 5 goals against Liverpool as Liverpool clinched the Premier League title and that kind of thing, against a very high-spirited Bodo Glimt. Paul is saying, I want to borrow your 2 cents on the Tottenham game. Personally, I find Bodo a very tricky team. Yeah, they're a very tricky team. If anything, it's not one of the teams I had predicted would be finding at this stage of the UEFA Europa League finals. In any case, I predicted that Lazio would be able to edge it. And when they went, I think, 2 goals up to level the aggregate score in the reverse fixture at the quarterfinals, I thought this would be the chance for Lazio to sort of proceed to advance. But I mean, football can always surprise you, and when a game gets to penalties, anything can happen. We saw that against PSG and Liverpool. So, yeah, Bodo is a very tricky side. But in almost a similar fashion, whatever Tottenham have done right this season has been on the European scene mostly, as opposed to what they've done in the Premier League. If we did not have maybe Southampton, Leicester City, and Ipswich this season in the Premier League, Tottenham would be easily staring under the threat of relegation for the way they've performed this season. I think we do come in this fixture, in this game, when their league table position is as low as 16th. But again, that fact notwithstanding, is that in the Europa League, they've tried to be disciplined. Even when you thought they had so many injuries, they still went on to try and grind out a result. And like Ange Postecoglou has constantly wanted to remind us that in his second year, he often does win a piece of silverware. And it will be interesting if we do find ourselves with an all-English final in San Mames, when you have Manchester United on one side and Tottenham Hotspurs on the other side. For me, that would bring back memories of Sir Alex Ferguson versus Harry Redknapp. I mean, United were just running away with that fixture. But in any case, Tottenham, I think their pivotal backline could be back in Mickey van der Ven and Cristiano Romero. Destin Udogi and Dejan Space have been quite good. Guillermo Vicario in that goalkeeping position is quite solid. And then, if you did notice, over the weekend, that was Ange Postecoglou. He did rest some of his players because he knew while that game was important versus Liverpool, this game against Bodo Glimt was the most important game, or is going to be the most important game. He does handle his side as well as far as being at home is concerned. So for me, it was interesting that he left out some of the key players. So, but if they do have Yves Bissouma available to start, you'd expect him at the best of midfield alongside Pape Matsa, who I thought they did have a very, very decent partnership in as far as that midfield is concerned, alongside James Maddison. And then, of course, you had Dejan Kulusevski, who is a very, very crucial player. So over the weekend, they started Achai Gray and Lucas Bagville in that midfield, and yet I thought they did have Dejan Kulusevski and Pape Matsa on that bench. So that for me was telling in regards to what the manager thought of the fixture, or what his objectives were, or where his priorities lay with the expectation of the fixture versus Bodo Glimt. So that's why I think Pape Matsa could start. Maybe this Bissouma could be absent, but still Pape Matsa is one of those. He's had a good season. And then he started with Brennan Johnson and Matthias Tel in front, ahead of alongside Dominic Solanke. So, and yet you had for me a Dejan Kulusevski, who is a more effective player than Matthias Tel. So I see. Gregory says, I also believe Bodo Glimt won't be an easy opponent to Spurs, but I find myself Spurs making it to the final, and this could mean we are having an English final. Then Paul, you say Bodo has an interesting start. They have won 8 of their last 10 two-legged games in Europe. They limit damage away and wait for the home tie to overrun opponents. That is true, but bearing in mind of how they behaved, especially in that 3-1, loss to Lazio, that's in normal time before the penalties. I think Tottenham could look to that game and see how to exploit this side, and still I'll go with an advantage for Tottenham to win it by 2-1. Now, the things that will happen in football that could be a bit hard to explain, because on a day you could play very good football and still end up losing. The perfect example I would give was that 3-1 loss for PSG versus Nice on match day 31 of the French League One, when PSG were trying to protect their unbeaten record. Now, they had a very good game. They had majority possession, I think as high as 72 or 76 possession. They had over about 30 shots on goal. Now, again, they could not manage to find a way to beat Nice. So they had a good game, but they just did not get the result. And then, if you do remember, sometime I think in 2017, I think 2015 or 2016, thereabout, Manchester United beat up against Arsenal by 3-1. And you had David De Gea save literally everything that came his way. Sanchez Alexis Sanchez did everything in that game, but could not find the breakthrough against David De Gea in goal. So, and yet you thought Arsenal had the best game, but United were the ones scoring goals on the other side. So I think that is also something for us to think about when we do consider what Bodo Gilmore has to offer, even when they're at home or even when they're away from home, that they could dominate play and all that kind of thing. But again, I also understand that in this moment of these competitions, cup competitions, sometimes it's about choosing your moments. Yesterday, we all know that Inter Milan were literally kind of outplayed when it came to ball domination and all that. But Inter chose their moments and they exploited those moments. 3 shots on target, 3 goals. And that's all that counted. Whereas when you look at Barcelona in retrospect, they could have scored more than 3. We had Lamine Yamal hit the crossbar in the first half before Ferran Torres, I think, scored that second goal. Then you had Jan Sommer being forced into a save by Rafinha in the dying minutes of the game. So it could boil down to moments and then effectiveness of within those very moments. So it's not to say that Bodo Glimot are going to be taken to the woodshed, but I do think that Tottenham Hotspur being at home, even with a disgruntled fan base that think that the manager should be sacked as soon as yesterday, I do get the feeling that they'll give themselves a fighting chance and win this game by 2 goals to 1. What happens in the reverse fixture remains to be seen, but it will be interesting to really watch. So I think that's another point for us to digest. Then maybe slightly the game between Jagaden and Chelsea. Now, I do not know much about Jagaden, I'll be honest. It's a team that surprised me. I think at the quarterfinals, they did surprise me a bit. But Manchester United fans, unfortunately, this game will be around the same kickoff time as yours. But it will be interesting if you can follow what David De Gea Quintana has been able to do with Fiorentina. I think he's done a tremendous job in that goal for Fiorentina. But Chelsea, again, for me, Chelsea are the favorites to win this UEFA Conference League. But for as long as Real Betis are still in it, then Chelsea will know that they have really a tie on their hands. If I were to make a prediction, I think I would go with a Real Betis versus Chelsea, a kind of final. But like I said, football can surprise you. You think Chelsea over the last 2 games, that's versus Fulham, winning that one 2-1 late on, Pedro Neto scoring the winner, and then over the weekend, Nicolas Jackson helping them to beat up against Everton by 1-0. Those 2 results, as they pursue for UEFA Champions League football next season, will be, I think, good motivation enough as they travel to Jagade. Whether they can come back with the results remains to be seen. I think I was looking at one of their ardent fans in Roy Jennings saying he did attend one of their games in the UEFA Conference League, and it looked like a training match. And that is what it really felt for most games during the league stage format of this competition. Chelsea were blowing teams away, they were scoring 5 goals, 4 goals, and all that kind of thing. But when you look in recent times, that kind of form has sort of dwindled. It has declined, to say the least. In fact, they did lose at home in their last fixture, but because they had done quite enough in the away fixture, they managed to walk away with it on the night, but they did not really perform well when it came to the quarterfinal stages of the competition. For those of you that do follow that, I'm trying to look up here for some comments to see where things are. We're looking for, yes, just give me a second. But yeah, you can as well give me your predictions for that Chelsea fixture against Jagaden. Chelsea will be away from home. Chelsea are away from home. So do let me know what your thoughts are in regards to that particular fixture. Whether you think Chelsea can pull through with their reputation intact. Can they come out on top? Can they come out on top? Yes, Chelsea did lose to Legia Warsaw by 2-1 in that reverse fixture on aggregate score. They lost 2-1, but they had won the first leg, I think, by 3-1. No, by 3-0. So they managed to advance to the semi-finals. But that, for me, was equally telling. And then, of course, we know that the other key team that was knocked out was Rapid Vienna. Rapid Vienna were knocked out by this Jagaden side that I think is unknown to many, just much like me, and yet I thought I'd given Rapid Vienna the advantage, but this side did surprise me. We are putting you on spot at the end of the show. We want to hear your predictions on both games in the Europa and Conference League games, plus Nottingham Forest versus Brentford. Now, Nottingham Forest versus Brentford, because we are already 40 minutes into the broadcast, but thank you to all those that have managed to stay with us all this long and with all the feedback. Nottingham Forest versus Brentford. Before I give you my prediction, Evangelis Marinakis, that's the owner of Nottingham Forest, has sort of stepped down from everyday management of club affairs because they are pursuing for a finish in the top 5 that will qualify for them to the UEFA Champions League. Now, the UEFA rules say that you cannot own 2 clubs that are going to be playing in the same competition. Remember, they do own, I think, Olympiacos. That's in Greece. So, and yet Olympiacos are destined to be in next season's UEFA Champions League. So, from what I was reading, he's put his shares in some sort of trustee something, and that guy, but he's stepping away from it all to be sort of in the shadows. Now, that clearly partly communicates what their intentions are, that they are really thinking that they do have a chance to qualify for Europe next season under the charges that's Nuno Espirito Santo. Versus Brentford, very tricky game. Brentford is one of those teams that you're never sure when they are going to rise up. They will surprise you against big opponents and beat them, but I do not think today will be the day. Can Nottingham Forest recover from that disappointment, losing to Manchester City by 2-0 in the semi-finals of the FA Cup? If there's any motivation, I think that will be it. They will be looking to recover. They will be looking to fight for a goal or an objective they didn't know they had at the start of the season, because I think when I was doing my season predictions, they're one of those teams that I thought would be closer to the relegation battle, but they really surprised me and probably most of everybody. Morgan Gibbs-White, what a season he's had. Chris Wood, very decent player. Callum Hudson-Odoi, Anthony Elanga. Now, Anthony Elanga, what a miss he did have in the semi-finals. So, but anyways, I'm going for a 2-1 win for Nottingham Forest. I'm going for a 2-1 win for Nottingham Forest, specifically because of what that game means as far as the Premier League table is concerned in regards to what their pursuits are. I think when you look at Brentford don't really have anything much to fight for in as far as the Premier League is concerned. But we do know that for a fact that where you finish sometimes matters in terms of how much money you get at the end of the season. But I'm going with Nottingham Forest to win that game by 2-1. I mean, Brentford are already safe. They're as high as 11th on the league table, and Nottingham Forest do know that if they win this particular game, they can go as high as 3rd on the Premier League table to 63 points. So yeah, I'm rooting for Nottingham Forest here to beat up against Brentford, at least by 2-1, to find a breakthrough. And then the other predictions, like I said, Bilbao to edge United by 2-1. That's the feeling I have. And then again, Tottenham Hotspurs to beat up against Bodo by 2-1. Chelsea against Jagaden. The reason as why this game is hard for me to predict is because I really do not know much against Jagaden. Then Real Betis versus Fiorentina. Home game for Real Betis. I think Real Betis win this one by 2-1. Anthony has been one of the standout players ever since joining them from on loan from Manchester United in January. They do have Isiko Alcoron, who did join them, has had a standout season there. So very, very decent side in Real Betis. You get the feeling that the manager in Manuel Pellegrini is the one best suited to guide such a team in this kind of moment. But take nothing away from Fiorentina. I think it will be close, but Real Betis could win it with 2-1 or 3-1. Yeah, that's what I'm going for with my prediction. Like I said, allow me to refrain from that prediction of the Chelsea game because I do not know much or literally anything about this Jagaden side. I'll need to do a little more homework in any case. But the UEFA Conference League often plays second fiddle to these premier European competitions. And I'm sorry, Chelsea fans, if you feel underserved in this particular moment, but it is what it is, unfortunately. So, guys, allow me to wrap it here and wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy your work. Let's continue to engage. I think we'll do another broadcast when we do get the starting lineups out and maybe try and digest what the starting lineups mean with reference to our predictions, because sometimes you make a prediction and then the manager puts out a starting lineup and you sort of inclined to change your mind a bit because of the kind of thing they put out. Maybe sometimes you have late fitness tests on players that you thought were going to be out of the game and then they are in the game, which essentially changes your perspective on how you think the team intends to go about the game and that kind of sort of thing. So if we do find the time, the opportune time, we'll be looking to do a broadcast at least 45 minutes before kickoff of those particular games, and then that, of course, the Brentford game does come earlier, much earlier. That's at 7:30 p.m. East African time. Do not forget, for those of you that do want to follow events from that particular fixture. So allow me to wish you a blessed day, happy Labor Day to all those that put in the hustle. It's been great having you here. Continuously join us on our different broadcasts. Continue to support us. We've fortunately hit the 1,000 subscriber mark. I think we have about 1,130 subscribers. So if you're new, please remember to subscribe. Much appreciated for the support. Let's continue to grow our community. It's for the fans, by the fans. Have a blessed day and bye-bye.